Well, hello and Merry Christmas, and for those of you who celebrate something else, Happy Holidays! I know I say this so often, but there is so much that happened this week, and that calls for a special episode. President Zelenskyy visited the front line in Bakhmut in the United States all within 48 hours, and his visit was pretty fruitful. Speaking of Bakhmut, there are lots of developments in today's key battle, and there are some serious accusations being thrown around in the international political arena. With that, hi, my name is Yulia and you're watching The Brief, where we normally discuss everything that happened in and pertaining to Ukraine in the past 24 hours and highlight the most important events of the week so far in under 20 minutes, but today is special. We're gonna start off by talking how Ukraine celebrated Christmas this year and why it's so important, and then summarize all of the most important events of the week. Let's go. Most of you know the song that's playing in the background right now as the American Carol of the Bells. But what if I told you that it's not American and it's not Carol of the Bells at all? It's actually a Ukrainian composition called Щедрик, written by Mykola Leontovich, originally meant to be as a three-part vocal harmony. It gained worldwide popularity in 1922 when it was sang by the Ukrainian National Choir in Carnegie Hall. Peter Wilhowsky heard it there and then published it with English text. But it's not the real translation. The lyrics are completely different in two languages and carry no similarities. And here's the first known recording of Щедрик from 1922 by the Brunswick label that was made in New York. So that's a fun fact that most of you probably didn't know. Were you surprised to learn this bit? Let me know in the comments. And while Щедрик is a central and typical part of Ukrainian Christmas, this year we were forced to celebrate the holiday under circumstances far from normal, in more ways than just one. Not only did the country have to adapt to military realities and let go of luscious Christmas trees and celebrations, most citizens actually had to celebrate it in the dark to begin with, but also we quite literally said no to Christmas this year. Well, Russian Christmas. If you haven't watched my videos before, then this is probably your first time hearing that Ukraine used to celebrate Christmas on January 7th, unlike most of the world that celebrates on December 25th. Why? Well, because when the Bolsheviks took over Ukraine in 1918, they decided to take over our religious holidays and proclaim them forbidden. Yeah, forbidden. By that, they moved our Christmas to January and also tried to ban all of our holiday figures, such as Святий Миколай, who brings presents for kids on the night of December 18th to 19th, such as coloring of писанкас, which is traditional to Easter, to the degree at which they were checking children's hands for the residue of paint to see if they actually partook in the forbidden activity. And of course, to substitute for Святий Миколай or Saint Nicholas came Ded Moroz, a figure that was supposed to be contra-religious. New Year's took central stage, and that became the gift-giving holiday. The motto of most American Christmas movies is a Grinch who steals Christmas. But that was a reality for Ukrainians. The Soviet Union came and literally stole our Christmas, proclaimed it harmful, banned Christmas trees, moved it, and created new, non-religious New Year's figures. And then at some point in the 30s, some man decided that, kids need to have Christmas trees for gift-giving holidays, and so they decided to bring back the Christmas tree. But the realities were full of anti-religious propaganda posters like this, that were supposed to promote holidays that had nothing to do with the church. However, Ukrainian partisans weren't gonna give up so easily, and they decided to do anything they could to preserve our traditions. And that's how we ended up still following them today. And this year, despite the circumstances, we did it too. Starting with the fact that we quite literally took our Christmas back and celebrated it on the 25th. Just like we did for the last time in 1917. Our government app Dia released a poll asking the population whether they would want to move the Christmas, and 58% of people agreed. So now Ukraine is considering making it official for the 25th of December across the country on a government level. That's big, guys. And clearly Russia was really pissed over that decision, because in the morning of the 24th, which is Christmas Eve in most places worldwide, they shelled Kherson. So much so that 5 people were dead and 30 wounded. And that is not even the final information yet. So instead of doing festive things with their families at the table, Kherson residents massively responded to calls for blood donations. Because we're unbreakable, and not even missiles can ruin our holiday spirit. Cues of people to become donors and save the victims of yesterday's terror in the city. People are ready to stand in line all day for the sake of salvation. This is the super strength of Ukrainians, said the deputy head of Kherson OP. And here are some photos of the gift that Kherson residents received on the morning of Christmas Eve from Russia. And while Kherson residents were fighting for the lives of their neighbors, Kyiv residents were fighting for the lives of Azov defenders who are spending Christmas in captivity. A performance in support of the captured soldiers of the Azov regiment was held on Sofia Square. A long table was arranged near the main Christmas tree of Kyiv, half of which was filled with food, and on the other half there were only empty metal plates. And those were there to suggest the conditions in which our defenders are probably spending this day. In the best case scenario, if they're not being tortured, because as you might remember, Russia categorically refuses to free defenders specifically of the Azov regiment and exchange them back home. Meanwhile, the defenders from other units were trying to make do and make the best out of Christmas Eve on the front lines. And as you know, Ukrainians are pretty nifty and we managed to get by in a lot of situations. So here are some photos from our defenders and how they spent their Christmas Eve. And they were not the only ones who got creative with the Christmas spirit. For instance, Santa came to Slovyansk-Donetsk region on an American armored vehicle to pass out gifts. Hey, you can't tell me that that wasn't inventive. And a festive train to the victory by Ukrzaliznytsia came to Mykolaiv to deliver gifts for little ones with a special performance. Because kids deserve to have a semblance of normalcy and grow up in the world outside of war. And small gestures like this really help to forget about their current environment just for a morning. And perhaps one of the most impressive things that had to do with the holiday spirit was the illumination of the Motherland Monument in Kyiv. And the man responsible for it is a Swiss artist, Gary Hofstetter, that came personally to make it happen. This gesture of support was just one of many to come from foreign figures. The King of Belgium dedicated part of his Christmas speech to the people of Ukraine. In his address, the monarch reminded Belgians that the war had claimed a lot of innocent lives and thanked his citizens for helping support Ukrainian refugees. According to the king, today Ukrainians are fighting for the same ideals of freedom and security that Belgians themselves had to fight for in the past, and he noted that Belgium is going to continue supporting us. The head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, followed his lead in her Christmas greeting by saying, "The outgoing year is special, a year of numerous challenges and unprecedented energy crisis. We overcome them and stand firmly on the side of Ukraine. Europe has shown its soul and its strength." She added and wished everyone a happy holiday. And of course, arguably everyone's favorite politician this year, the Prime Minister of Finland, Sanna Marin, chimed in too. Each of us can offer help in a convenient way. For example, by devoting your time to help Ukrainians or by making a donation to any humanitarian organization. And that's something that I encourage you to do. I know that by the time you'll be watching this, Christmas will already be over. But New Year's is yet to come. And then there are still some Ukrainians who are going to be celebrating the holiday on the 7th of January. There are still so many kids and even adults that are not going to receive presents this year. To help fix that situation, the government of Ukraine created a website where you can donate to a specific child based on their letter that they wrote to Santa or St. Nicholas. The donations range anywhere from $12 to $24 or more if you'd like. For most of us, it's not a huge contribution, but to a Ukrainian kid, it'll be a life-changing experience. So if you'd like to do a good deed this holiday season, I'm going to leave a link in the description below so you can easily access it. And since we're on the topic of life-changing events, let's move on to Zelenskyy's visit to the United States Capitol, or rather, its aftermath. If you watched my previous video, then you know that the president of Ukraine has delivered a speech that triggered a standing ovation like never seen before from the Congress of the United States. And he delivered those memorable quotes, standing in front of Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris, who were holding a Ukrainian blue and yellow flag signed by the defenders of Bakhmut that Zelenskyy received less than 48 hours before that, when he was visiting the front line and the soldiers asked him to give it to the American Congress. And to be honest, as a Ukrainian, and I think most of us will agree with me, let me know if you don't, but I never thought that our flag would be so proudly displayed in such magnitude in the US Congress. Ever. And it's such a bittersweet feeling, because on the one hand, it's an incredibly powerful moment, but on the other hand, it's the saddest moment of our lives. It had to come to a genocide for the world to start taking Ukrainian presidents seriously, host them in the United States, and applaud to their speeches. Unlike me, Zelenskyy himself had only positive things to say about his visit though. He left pleased with the results of his visit and feeling bipartisan support. Despite a generally warm reception, there were some Republicans that were not impressed with him. For instance, House Minority Leader Steve Scalise said that the Congress is interested in supporting Ukraine, but on the condition that the money is going to be carefully checked. Funny he says that, because representatives of Ukraine continuously keep saying, yes, we do welcome that. We want to make sure that you feel comfortable with everything that you give us and with where it ends up. And then Republicans are like, no, but we want to know that you're handling the money responsible, so we want to check it. And then Ukrainians are like, okay, yes, sure, please come check it. And the Republicans are like, but no, we need to check it. Do you see where I'm going with this? It's kind of a vicious circle where Ukraine keeps agreeing to all of the demands and conditions, and then certain, mostly Republicans, always have something more to say. Unlike Steve Scalise, Nancy Pelosi was in fact very impressed with Zelenskyy, and here's what she had to say about his speech.
It was one of the finest speeches I've ever heard in the Congress. It was historic in that he and Churchill are the only two wartime presidents who have come here to talk about asking our help and thanking us for our anticipated help to stop the tyranny in Europe. It's pretty exciting.
And whether some people and/or politicians were happy about it or not, this visit was very fruitful for our country and triggered quite a bit of international response. First and foremost, the United States has just approved a historically high defense budget, over 40 billion of which is going to go to aid for Ukraine in 2023. Then the G7 leaders said that they will also continue supporting Ukraine through 2023 and have already raised $32 billion for aid. The government of Denmark followed suit and stated that they have allocated more than $42 million for additional assistance to purchase weapons for Ukraine. But not all politicians had some positive things to say. The president of France, Emmanuel Macron, in his now, might I say, regular fashion, said this: Ukraine's accession to NATO is not likely because of Moscow. He also noted that Ukraine needs to be provided with security guarantees in the process of deciding to end the war, but Russia also needs such guarantees. What does Russia have on him? Because at this point, no self-respecting European leader is going to be asking for anything that has to do with helping Russia. So yeah, what do you think it is that Putin has on him? Because he must have something, right? Let me know. Speaking of strengthening connections, on his way home, Zelenskyy said that he met with the president of Poland, Andrzej Duda. We discussed strategic plans for the future, bilateral relations, and cooperation at the international level in 2023. And then Ukraine announced its plans to open embassies in 10 African countries. Next year, we will increase our activities. We are already resetting relations with dozens of African countries. Next year, we have to strengthen them. We have already identified 10 countries where new Ukrainian embassies in Africa will be opened. And the parade of high-profile announcements ended with this one. Zelenskyy stated conditions under which he would make other foreign visits. Let me remind you that the one to the US last week was his first foreign trip since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. If any visit potentially has the same significant strategic content as my visit to the United States, if the results of the visit will directly affect our armed forces, all of our defense forces, if one or another of our partners is ready to take the lead in implementing the points of the Ukrainian peace formula, if there can be decisive steps to accelerate our victory, then as an exception to the general practice of wartime, my negotiations can be held at the personal level. Speaking of, Zelenskyy's team is planning to present a peace plan to end the war in February 2023. Yeah, you heard that correctly. in 2 months. US, Ukrainian, and NATO officials have said that Ukraine's position in any talks where it is likely to demand significant concessions from Moscow will depend on its position on the battlefield, and so Kyiv wants to prepare for potential peace talks by achieving military victories. Yeah, let's move on to those, shall we? But before that, I present to you our favorite segment, Russian Madness. And this time, you got it. It's extended because it's the holiday season and Russians are gifting us with more things to laugh at. And this time I'm gonna rank these from my least favorite to my most favorite. Let's go, starting at number 4. Putin believes that 99.9% of Russians are ready to sacrifice everything for their motherland. According to him, it is allegedly confirmed through the history of Russia's existence. Let me just remind you of this beautiful photo. What is that? That's a border crossing between Russia and Georgia. And these are the men who don't want to sacrifice anything for their motherland. Because they're kind of running away. Number 3, Putin believes that US Patriot missile systems are outdated and that the Russian military is gonna have no problem destroying them on the territory of Ukraine. Just because you haven't seen something doesn't make it outdated. I know that Russia has modern technology of scotch tape and glue. And that is said by the man who shoots air defense missiles onto the territory of Ukraine. Number 2, this lovely phone call that came in on air of a program that was glorifying the successes of the Russian military and how well it's taking care of its servicemen.
Председателем Совета казачьих атаманов Сахалинской области. Я не так давно вернулся со СВО, был ранен под Северодонецком. И на сегодняшний день встречаюсь с интересными вопросами на местах. При всей вашей рекламе я не могу ни трудоустроиться, ни оказаться полезным, ни получить даже медицинскую помощь. Потому что нас везде, кто участвовал в первых понос, практически никого не осталось живых.
Nothing says the second strongest military in the world, just like a veteran calling in to complain about it and basically say the opposite of everything that you have just said on air, but I digress. And at number 1, do you remember that law in Russia where you couldn't call this special military operation a war? Yeah, that one. So, anyone who dares disobey that law is subject to being incarcerated for 10, maybe 15 years, I don't quite remember, but that is not the point. So, the man, the myth, the legend, a Russian president, Vladimir Putin, has recently, on air, publicly, called the events in Ukraine a war, and he got trolled by his own law. Because now a deputy from St. Petersburg really wants that law to be upheld, and Putin brought to justice under the article of spreading fakes. Well, need I say more? Do you guys agree with the ranking of these? What was your favorite manifestation of Russian copium? And while Russian servicemen and veterans have lots to complain about, Ukrainian servicemen are seeing the future very bright. According to the Institute for the Study of War, the Russian offensive in the area of Bakhmut has slowed down drastically. It looks like Russian troops will find it difficult to maintain the momentum of their offensive operations and may try to initiate a tactical or operational pause. In fact, it's looking so bad for them that the Vice President of the European Commission has said that Putin has already lost the war, just like Hitler in 1943. Oof, that's a heavy statement.
Hey, something burning? Oh, wait, it's you, because you just got burned.
And the Wall Street Journal might have cracked the code as to why the Russian dictator is not quite grasping that yet. According to them, his entourage misinforms him heavily on the state of affairs at the front. Allegedly, every morning he receives a report on the situation, which is prepared in such a way that it emphasizes successes and minimizes failures. And it's often late, as it is first processed by the special services. You know, to make sure that it's extra successful.
Great success.
And to emphasize just how embellished those reports are, the British intelligence explained why Russia has no capability of attacking despite the presence of manpower. The key factor that limits the offensive potential of Russian military in Ukraine is absolute lack of ammunition. Ukrainians, on the other hand, have something to look forward to in terms of ammo. The foreign minister Dmytro Kuleba said that we will have all the weapons necessary, and it's just a matter of time. Putin might be clueless, but his press secretary Peskov seems to have a little bit of a clearer picture of exactly how screwed they are. Peskov noted that during Zelenskyy's visit to Washington, neither him nor Biden reached out to the Kremlin about peace talks. Surprising. Obviously, it's ludicrous to think that either one of these political figures would be talking about anything with Russia at this point. What it does show is that Peskov might want them to reach out and talk peace, because evidently he's not nearly as delusional about the success of the special military operation as the Russian leader is. And this is a perfect moment to transition to some more reasonable international relations. More than 60 world-famous locations temporarily shut off their lights in solidarity with Ukraine, like Niagara Falls. Why? Because they took part in the United 24's project Light Up Ukraine. It aims to raise funds through the platform to buy generators for Ukrainian hospitals. And while it's a very, very sweet gesture and we all really appreciate it, of course, it's very different to turn the lights off for a couple of hours and have the lights on only for a couple of hours. Now, while that was happening, the United States and the United Kingdom have prepared some pretty wild accusations against North Korea. They have officially accused the DPRK of supplying infantry ammunition and missiles to mercenaries of Russian Wagner private military company. Of course, the officials in Pyongyang deny the accusations. They called them baseless and the most absurd distraction, not worthy of interpretation. I know that North Korea is a little technologically behind, but do they not know what satellite imagery is? Because it's quite easy to confirm whether such deliveries happened based on satellite imagery. From Maxar, for one. They can deny it all they want, but for the US and the UK to come out with this publicly, the evidence must be excruciating. However, if this does turn out to be true, it's not all that bad news. Ben Wallace thinks that Russia asking DPRK for their outdated weapons is a sign of despair. We will work with our partners to make North Korea pay a high price for supporting Russia's illegal war in Ukraine. And maybe, just maybe, they'll return their title of the most sanctioned country in the world, because this year, Russia has stole the trophy from them. And then the UK handed over a pretty significant package of extreme weather-oriented military aid to us. What news report would it be if China didn't enter the scene? Their ambassador to the European Union, Fu Kong, said that Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine is putting China in a very difficult situation. Not Ukraine, China. He stressed that the Chinese authorities do not want to choose between friends, Ukraine and Russia. But then in a quite contradicting fashion to this statement, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said this: China intends to deepen cooperation with Russia next year and assured of country's impartial stance on the war in Ukraine. Regarding the crisis in Ukraine, we have consistently adhered to the fundamental principles of objectivity and impartiality, without giving preference to one side or the other, without adding fuel to the fire, and especially without seeking mercenary benefits from the situation. Funny, 'cause I thought you were just saying that you don't want to choose between friends, which implies that you are, but now you're impartial on a genocide? Makes sense. And to conclude, some pretty wild and loud statements. Iran criticized President Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy should know better that Iran's strategic patience with such baseless accusations is not unlimited. The Iranian side did not supply any military equipment to any party for use in the war in Ukraine, and that Iran respects the territorial integrity of all countries, including Ukraine. Well, those are very carefully chosen words, because Iran indeed did say that they supplied weapons to Russia, but they didn't supply them for a particular cause because they didn't ask. But they also supplied them amid the war in Ukraine, so they knew what these weapons are going to be used for. But yeah, I applaud your ability to build ambiguous statements. And it's interesting because this comes amid the rumors that Iran is scared of being sanctioned by the United States and therefore has been refusing to sell more weapons to Russia. Convenient, am I right? And for dessert in the international affairs, a Ukrainian hacker has stolen Russian drug money and donated it to Ukraine. Ukrainian cyber intelligence specialist Alex Holden lives in the United States, but he does not forget his own. He recently hacked the wallet of the Russian drug network Solaris and donated the money to a Kyiv-based charity that provides humanitarian aid to Ukrainians, in the amount of $25,000. And here is what he said. It would be better if the Kremlin solved the drug problem in its own country instead of invading Ukraine. And that makes for a perfect note to leave you on. With that, I'm gonna go, and if you enjoyed this video or found it informative, please don't forget to give it a like, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel, and turn on all of the notifications so you don't miss on the next one. And as always, check your sources, don't fall for propaganda, and I will see you on Wednesday.